welcome to another episode of Open Mic, where we feature some of the members of our diverse ANU Law alumni community and some of the paths that they've taken. Today we have Bachelor of Economics and Bachelor of Laws grad Sally Bryant. Sally currently works as a senior solicitor in New South Wales Legal Aid, and she was recently awarded a Public Service Medal at the 2021 Australia Day Honours. Sally, welcome, and I'm glad to have you on air.
Thank you, Mike. I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you. So I guess, Sally, to kick us off, for those that aren't familiar with who you are, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, what you currently do, and what motivates you?
Well, I currently work at Legal Aid New South Wales. I have done for the past 25 years. I work in the Civil Law Division. I grew up in Cowra, which is in country New South Wales, and so I'm a proud product of the country and public education. And as you said, I studied at ANU. I went to work at a medium-sized law firm called Trescott and Maddox in Sydney for about 5 years, and then I moved to Coffs Harbour to work in a small country firm, and then started at Legal Aid 25 years ago. You asked me what motivates me, and I guess what I would say, I work in the Civil Law Division of Legal Aid, and in civil law, our brand is, we talk about it is law for everyday life. And so the kinds of things we do are we help disadvantaged and vulnerable clients navigate issues that affect their everyday lives, from housing issues like tenancy or a mortgage problem, problems that affect their income and livelihood, like problems with Centrelink or employment, problems with debt, financial hardship, fines, that sort of thing, and protecting human rights. And we focus particularly on specifically vulnerable groups like people experiencing homelessness or Aboriginal communities, prisoners, refugees, children, and those experiencing elder abuse, and of course victims of disasters such as bushfire and flood. So what motivates me, I guess, is the ability to make a difference to people's everyday lives every day.
Right. You said that you've worked for 25 years at Legal Aid. Did you ever imagine doing 25 years in this kind of role, in this kind of environment?
No. And I was talking with people the other day who said these days most people don't stay in a job longer than 2 or 3 years and then they move on. And I've only had 3 jobs in my very long career. No, I didn't imagine that for a moment, but I've worked in the Coffs Harbour Legal Aid office the whole time. So I've been lucky enough to work in an organisation that has provided a variety of roles. So I've had probably 4 different roles in the time I've been at Legal Aid. I have had 2 children during that time, and Legal Aid's a marvellously supportive employer, and so I was able to work part-time after my children. So although I never imagined I'd work there that long, I couldn't imagine working anywhere else.
Right. Cool. That's great to hear. It's definitely, like you said, it's a bit of a rarity these days to see someone working that long. Now, let's take you a little bit back to your time at ANU. I mentioned at the start that you have a law and an economics degree from the university. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how your ANU experience, if at all, like shape your views and your outlook and what you wanted out of your life, out of your career?
Well, look, if I be honest, Mike, I started uni in 1983, and around that time, there was a bit of a push that you should do a degree that would secure you a role. Economics probably wasn't in my heart. I enjoyed parts of it, but I found it quite a struggle, and all my friends doing arts law, I think, were having far more fun. But I really enjoyed the law side of it, and obviously that's the path I took rather than economics. But for me, ANU was just a wonderful stepping stone because, coming from the country, I was, 18 years old when I went to ANU, and it was just a great stepping stone rather than go straight to Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such an accessible and approachable uni, but still really prestigious. And I think one of the things I loved about ANU is the beauty of the campus and the architecture. Mm-hmm. Everything was really close together, right in the heart of the city. And it draws on people from across the whole country, not just one state, and people from other countries. And for a naive young country girl, that was fantastic. I made great connections, learnt lots, really enjoyed it. The other thing about my experience at ANU was my time in a residential college. I think one of the great things about ANU is the variety and the choice of residential colleges, which it obviously has to have with bringing people from right across the country. And I actually think living on campus is fundamental to the university experience. And I lived at Bruce Hall, and my best friends remain the friends I made there, and I met my husband there. And in a nice circle of life, my daughter is studying law at ANU, and she lived at Bruce Hall for 2 years. She's moved out into a student house now. But so for me, ANU wasn't just the law school. It was also college, and it was the campus, and it was being so close to the city. In terms of the law school itself, I was there in kind of a golden era from 83 to 88, and the three deans in my time were Professors Pearce and Zines and Hambley, obviously all legends, and I was lucky enough to be taught by them all. And I was taught by the fabulous Philippa Weeks, who was quite a mentor to me, quite a role model, and she actually was my referee for my first job.
You're right. Wow.
Yeah. But in my last year at law was what we then called the legal workshop. And it's called something different now. I'm not sure what it is, Mike. But Wal Hutchison was the leader at the time, and that was probably my favourite year at uni because it was a really bonding time for law students. We all came together, and we actually learnt what it meant to be a lawyer on the ground after all the theory. So that was just a lovely way to finish off my time there.
That's great. Have you ever been back on campus in recent years?
Well, I have. I went to the open day when my daughter was studying there. So some things have changed, but the beautiful lawns are still the same. And so I have been back.
That's cool. Now, earlier this year, you were awarded a Public Service Medal at the Australia Day Awards for your work during the 2019-2020 bushfires. Can you talk a little bit about the role that the disaster response legal service played during such a critical time, and what it meant for you to be recognized for the work that you and your team put in?
Oh, look, I think, Mike, it's probably one of the highlights of my very long career was being awarded that medal. I just feel proud and quite overwhelmed, I think. But I think it's really important to point out, I think it's as much for the team as it is for me, and the great work that everyone did over what was such a catastrophic 8 months. People talk about it as the summer bushfires, but they really started in late August 2019 and they were still burning in February 2020. Living up here on the North Coast, they started up here very early. So for me, it was a very long season, and it was quite personal because, my family was impacted, a lot of my friends were impacted, and a lot of my colleagues up and down the coast were impacted. So, but the work of what we call the DRLS, the Disaster Response Legal Service, was really quite phenomenal. It was amazing. People just pulled together and they drove long distances to bushfire affected areas. They worked in really difficult conditions. They worked really long days. They worked on weekends. Often they themselves had been impacted. A lot of our colleagues had been evacuated or had to fight fire in their own world and then go to recovery centres to provide legal advice. It was really it was just extraordinary seeing the work of the team. All up, I think we mobilised about 68 lawyers across the Civil Law Division and across Legal Aid more broadly to go down to recovery centres down on the South Coast. We had people driving up and down all over the state, going to community meetings, providing legal education. And, you know, some people have asked me, what role do lawyers play in the aftermath of a fire? Because people think of, I guess, the other more immediate needs. But the kinds of things we can do, and like most things, if you get in early, it's much easier to fix any legal problems that come up later. But the kinds of things we provide legal assistance on are issues around insurance, what people are actually entitled to, if they're offered a lump sum payment, is it enough, how to dispute a rejected claim, or how to ask for more. But beyond insurance, there's lots of other issues that come up, like for tenants who don't actually own their own home, but if their home is burnt down, what are their legal rights? What are their responsibilities? What about their lost goods? And things around government entitlements and employment, you know, the list goes on. And what we know is that with most things, if you can get in early and resolve a legal problem early before it becomes a really big problem, it's much easier to resolve. But also for people who are disaster affected and suffering trauma, it's one less thing to worry about.
Moving on a little bit, you have a lot of other projects, like you mentioned earlier, that are focused on community outreach, like community legal education. Can you briefly talk a little bit about these and what drove you to focus on providing service to and platforms to local communities and vulnerable groups?
Well, I guess for most of my life, I've lived in the regions and worked in the regions. And so I've seen firsthand the difficulties that people in the regions face accessing services. If you add vulnerability or disability into the mix, it makes it even more difficult for people to access, and in my case, legal services. And so it's really important to design targeted, accessible, quality services in an outreach model. So rather than clients coming to us, we go to them. And so the model is designed around working closely with community groups and organisations to decide the best venue to make it accessible to our clients. So in some cases that may be a soup kitchen, in some cases it's a community hall, in some cases it's a medical centre, which is a really interesting model of working together. So that's the kind of work we've been doing in the regions for probably over 10 years now. It took a real hit during COVID, and that was a real concern for us because we couldn't get out into community. All our services turned to phone. So gradually we're getting back with making sure it's safe and that people are comfortable for us to come back. But we're looking forward to getting back out there.
We're nearing the end of this interview. You earlier, I guess I'll let you off on this one. You earlier mentioned that your daughter is studying at ANU. She's studying law at uni. Now, you know, as a parent, as a mother, as a professional, you know, you've worked for over 25, 30 years. Or what advice would you give to, you know, uni students who are currently studying, whether it's law or any other degree? How do you think, what would you say to them, and how do you think they could stand out and make a difference?
Well, it's funny, Mike, my son is actually studying law too. He's studying law at the University of New South Wales.
Right.
So I feel quite proud that they both chose that as their course. Look, I don't profess to be able to advise all these smart young law students today, but if I were advising my children, what I would say to them is give everything a go. There's lots of different pathways. There's not one right way. And as we talked at the beginning, you're probably going to have 10 or 15 jobs in your career. And so don't stress that the first one isn't the right one or isn't your dream job, but take any opportunity you've got, learn from the great people you're working with, and gradually you'll find what it is that lights your passion and lights your interest. You've got to be interested. You've got to like what you're doing. We're a long time working, so you've got to enjoy it. But my advice would be, don't think you're going to walk into your dream job on the first day, and don't be hard on yourself if it's not where you imagined yourself to be. But learn from great people, surround yourself with good mentors, and do what makes you feel good.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sally, for your time. Really appreciate it. Like I said, thank you for all the work that you did during the bushfire season. And it was great talking to you. And I hope the next time we do this, we can do it on campus. We can catch up over a cup of coffee.
Oh, let's do that, Mike. I do get down there when I can. So let's do that. Well, thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you.